He doesn't slam doors. He doesn't announce endings. He simply disappears, clean, quiet, and absolute. And the world never realizes the moment everything shifted. A Sigma male doesn't walk away out of weakness. He walks away the exact second a person becomes misaligned with his peace, his values, or his evolution. No warnings, no explanations, just a silent exit that speaks louder than confrontation ever could. Because for him, relationships are not maintained by effort alone. They're maintained by respect, energy, and reciprocity. The moment those collapse, so does his presence. And when he leaves for good. But not out of anger, out of clarity. If you've ever wondered who he disappears from without a single clue, stay right here. This video breaks down the 7 types of people a Sigma male walks away from instantly, even when they don't see it coming.
Before we dive in, drop a single word in the comments so I know you're tuned in. Aware.
And if you're new here, subscribe to Silent Wise for more deep, cinematic psychology on the Sigma mindset, the truth you feel but rarely hear spoken. People who drain his energy more than they contribute to his life. He walks away because energy is his most sacred resource, and anyone who constantly pulls from it without giving anything back becomes a silent threat to his growth. A Sigma male reads people the way others read weather patterns. He senses when someone arrives with open hands instead of open intentions. At first, he gives freely, observing how they hold what he offers.
But over time, the imbalance becomes unmistakable.
Every conversation feels heavier. Every interaction feels like he's carrying both his weight and theirs.
And when he realizes the dynamic is built on consumption instead of connection, something inside him shuts down.
He withdraws, not out of coldness, but out of self-preservation.
This is the moment his silence begins working like a mirror. People who drain him suddenly feel exposed without his constant steadying presence. He stops explaining, stops overextending, stops filling the gaps they refuse to address within themselves.
When he pulls his energy back, the absence hits harder than any confrontation could.
He observes from a distance as they scramble for the emotional supply he once provided effortlessly. And while others might hold on out of guilt or obligation, the Sigma does not negotiate with exhaustion. He chooses environments where energy circulates, not environments where it dies. His exit is quiet, precise, almost surgical. One day he simply stops showing up emotionally, mentally, physically. Not because he wants to prove a point, but because he finally understands that staying would slowly strip him of the clarity he needs to keep evolving. He honors himself by walking away from anyone who mistakes his loyalty for unlimited access. And once he leaves, he never looks back, because he knows one truth better than anyone. When your energy is priceless, not everyone deserves proximity to it. People who manipulate, guilt trip, or pressure him emotionally. He walks away the moment he senses emotional pressure disguised as affection, because a Sigma male can feel manipulation in the air long before a single word is spoken. His intuition registers the shift instantly, the subtle twist in tone, the weaponized silence, the calculated guilt meant to steer his choices. At first, he watches quietly, letting the pattern expose itself. Manipulators rely on reaction, but his calm becomes their enemy. When they try to guilt trip him into compliance, expecting remorse or explanation, they get something far more unsettling: emotional stillness. That silence tells him everything he needs to know. This person wants control, not connection. As the tactics escalate, he retreats inward, observing the psychological architecture behind every guilt-laced sentence. He notices how they frame themselves as victims to make him responsible for their emotions. He recognizes how they exaggerate needs, shrink his boundaries, and use pressure to bend his decisions. And while others get tangled in the emotional web, he steps back from it entirely. The more they push, the more he detaches.
He refuses to be molded, coerced, or emotionally taxed into obedience. His withdrawal isn't dramatic, it's deliberate. He stops responding to their narratives and stops accepting roles they try to assign him. Once he sees manipulation clearly, trust dissolves instantly. When he finally walks away, it's without announcement, argument, or closure. Manipulators hunger for a reaction, but he gives them nothing. No anger, no explanation, no final conversation to soothe their ego. He simply removes his emotional access, and that loss hits harder than confrontation ever could. His disappearance forces them to face a truth they never expected. They cannot control someone who has mastered himself. And as he moves on, his clarity sharpens. He protects his peace by abandoning anyone who uses emotion as a cage. Once a Sigma male feels the grip of manipulation, the relationship ends long before he takes his first step out the door. People who are inconsistent, switching between interest and indifference.
Inconsistency is the quickest way to lose a Sigma male because he reads emotional instability the same way others read weather patterns, with precision and memory. When someone flips between warmth and distance, attention and apathy, he doesn't get confused.
He gets observant. He sees the shift in tone, the delayed replies, the sudden enthusiasm followed by silence. To others, it might look like mixed signals.
To him, it's a red flag wrapped in emotional turbulence. He knows that inconsistency isn't an accident. It's either immaturity, manipulation, or a lack of genuine intention. And he refuses to build anything on a foundation that moves every time he steps on it.
At first, he gives the person space to reveal their true pattern. He doesn't chase, doesn't question, doesn't cling. He simply watches the rhythm, the disappearing act when they're bored, the sudden return when they need validation, the emotional hot and cold meant to keep him curious.
But a Sigma male isn't wired for emotional games.
His mind doesn't romanticize unpredictability, it analyzes it.
Every switch between interest and indifference becomes data, and that data tells him one thing: this person is not stable enough to match his depth or consistency.
While they try to keep him guessing, he's already arriving at the conclusion: inconsistency is a preview of future disappointment. By the time they realize he's slipping away, the decision has already been made in silence.
He withdraws effortlessly because he never invested in someone who couldn't invest back.
There's no confrontation, no emotional outburst, no attempt to fix what was never solid.
He simply stops showing up where stability doesn't exist.
His absence speaks with a clarity that mixed signals never could.
And once he's gone, there is no second chance. A Sigma male only values people who show up the same way every time, with intention, honesty, and emotional reliability.
Consistency is connection. Inconsistency is closure.
People who disrespect his boundaries or personal space. When someone crosses a Sigma male's boundaries, he doesn't argue, lecture, or warn. He observes. A Sigma's personal space isn't just physical, it's emotional, mental, and energetic territory he protects with quiet precision. The moment someone pushes too hard, demands too much, or assumes access he never offered, something shifts inside him. His expression stays calm, but internally he marks the moment with perfect clarity. This person cannot coexist with my peace. Boundaries, to him, are not negotiable preferences. They are the structure that protects his autonomy, identity, and focus. And anyone who ignores them reveals their true nature: entitled, intrusive, or unaware. At first, he gives subtle cues: shorter replies, fewer details, more silence. Not to punish, but to measure. Do they notice? Do they adjust? Or do they push harder? Most people who disrespect boundaries show their intentions immediately. They interpret silence as an invitation, not a signal. They escalate, probe, insist, or guilt trip. They treat access to him as a right instead of a privilege. And that's when he disconnects internally. A Sigma male doesn't raise his voice or explain why their behavior is a violation. He simply stops granting the emotional or psychological space where the disrespect occurred. And in that withdrawal, he reveals a truth. Boundaries aren't meant to be argued about. They're meant to be lived by. By the time the person realizes something is wrong, he has already stepped out of the dynamic. The warmth is gone. The openness is gone. And in its place stands a calm, unshakable distance. He doesn't return to situations where his limits were ignored, because disrespect, for him, is not a misunderstanding, it's a character flaw. Once someone shows they cannot honor the space he needs to stay grounded, they lose the privilege of being in his life. His boundaries are not walls, they are filters. And anyone who pushes through them without permission filters themselves out of his world forever. People who compete with him out of insecurity, not growth.
People who try to outshine him rather than improve themselves are the quickest to lose their place in a Sigma male's world. He senses insecurity the moment it enters the room. The forced jokes, the bragging disguised as conversation, the subtle attempts to one-up him. Instead of feeling challenged, he feels bored. Competition rooted in insecurity isn't about excellence, it's about fear.
And a Sigma can read that fear in a heartbeat.
He notices when someone starts measuring themselves against him, not because they admire his discipline, but because they feel threatened by his quiet competence. And in that moment, he detaches.
He never competes with someone who's fighting shadows in their own mind.
As time passes, the insecure competitor exposes themselves without him lifting a finger. They start mimicking what he does, copying his ideas, or trying to get reactions from him to validate their worth. Sigmas see these behaviors as signs of emotional immaturity, a hunger for superiority disguised as ambition. But he doesn't feed that hunger. He stays silent.
And that silence becomes a mirror, forcing the insecure person to confront the emptiness behind their need to win. The Sigma's refusal to play the game makes them more desperate, more obvious, more unstable.
And while they spiral in the chaos of comparison, he keeps moving forward with effortless calm. Eventually, the Sigma male walks away without hesitation. Not because he feels threatened, but because he recognizes the danger of staying around people who compete from insecurity. They drain energy, distort relationships, and create conflict where none existed. He chooses environments where competition is rooted in mastery, not envy, where people grow beside him, not against him. To him, real strength is collaborative, not combative. And anyone who turns life into a scoreboard instead of a path of evolution disqualifies themselves from his presence. In the Sigma world, insecurity is noise, and he leaves before it becomes a storm.
People who depend on him but offer nothing in return, emotionally or mentally.
He feels the shift long before anyone notices it, the moment someone begins to rely on him, not out of trust, but out of comfort. At first, he gives, because giving is natural to someone who knows how to carry his own weight. But over time, the imbalance becomes impossible to ignore. The conversations start flowing in one direction. The emotional support becomes a routine rather than a connection. The expectations rise while appreciation fades. A Sigma male sees this pattern with surgical clarity, dependence without reciprocity. And that is when the quiet distancing begins. He doesn't announce it, argue about it, or seek validation for it. He simply withdraws his energy from a place that only takes and never strengthens. As the relationship continues, the burden grows heavier. The person leans on him for stability, guidance, reassurance, yet offers no support of their own. Their presence becomes a weight, not a partnership. Sigma males are not afraid of carrying people through storms, but they refuse to be someone's permanent shelter. He recognizes the danger of becoming a crutch. Once someone starts depending on him for their identity, for their decisions, for their emotional regulation, They begin to drain the resources he needs for his own evolution. He senses when he is being used as an emotional battery, silently powering someone who gives nothing back. And in that realization, he understands something essential. Loyalty without balance is a beautiful way to self-destruct.
By the time he walks away, the decision has already matured in silence. He leaves without blame, without resentment, without dramatic closure. Just a clean exit from a connection that no longer serves either side. The truth is simple. He values depth, not dependency. He thrives in relationships built on mutual growth, not emotional extraction. When someone offers nothing in return, no emotional support, no intellectual stimulation, no shared momentum, he sees no future in the connection. For a Sigma male, imbalance is unsustainable, and draining relationships are a slow death of purpose. So he steps out quietly, choosing environments where energy flows in both directions and connection strengthens rather than weakens who he is becoming. People who create unnecessary chaos, drama, or instability around him. He feels the disturbance long before it becomes visible, the emotional turbulence that certain people carry with them like a storm cloud. Their presence shifts the atmosphere. Small problems turn into crises, minor misunderstandings erupt into battles, and peace becomes a luxury constantly under threat. A Sigma male reads this chaos instantly because it disrupts the order he builds within himself. Drama drains his mental clarity, steals his time, and attempts to pull him into worlds he never asked to be part of. He doesn't need shouting matches, guilt traps, impulsive reactions, or emotional explosions. He thrives on stability, direction, and quiet momentum. So, the moment someone begins manufacturing disorder, he instinctively distances himself. Not out of coldness, but out of self-preservation. Chaos makers thrive on reaction, and when he refuses to participate, they escalate. They misinterpret calm as indifference, silence as disrespect, boundaries as rejection. But what they fail to understand is that stability is not just a preference for him, it's a requirement. He protects his inner world with almost sacred discipline. He sees drama as a parasite, feeding on attention, energy, and emotional bandwidth. While others may get pulled into the noise, he steps back and observes the pattern repeating itself. The same person creating the same instability, disguised as emotion, passion, or just being honest. He doesn't try to fix them. He doesn't argue. He doesn't justify. He simply recognizes that some people are wired for chaos, and he refuses to make their instability his responsibility. By the time he walks away, the decision was made long before the final moment. He withdraws from the noise, the unpredictability, and the emotional volatility with silent precision. His departure is not dramatic. It is surgical. He cuts ties cleanly, removing himself from the cycles that drain growth and suffocate purpose. A Sigma male values peace more than companionship, clarity more than comfort, and evolution more than attachment. Anyone who replaces stability with chaos becomes a barrier to his path. And in a world already loud, unstable, and unpredictable, he refuses to allow someone else to wreak havoc inside the one realm he fully controls, his inner universe. When a Sigma male finally walks away, he doesn't slam doors or leave warnings behind. He leaves quietly, and the silence says everything. His absence becomes a mirror people can't avoid, reflecting the chaos, imbalance, or disrespect they never noticed while he was still there. And by the time they realize what his presence held together, he is already rebuilding his life in a place where his peace is protected, his growth is supported, and his energy is no longer wasted on people who never deserved it. If this breakdown gave you clarity, type "peace first" in the comments so I know you're one of the few who understands this mindset on a deeper level. And if you want more cinematic, psychological insights like this, subscribe to Silent Wise, where the quiet ones finally get the space, the truth, and the power they deserve.